Hey everyone, my name's Terrell, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most lethal traps in the game, the Incinerator trap. Weighing in at a hefty 70 capacity, the Incinerator can fire, pun completely intended, 9 streams of flame at a default range of 4 blocks, beginning about 1.1 seconds after being triggered. The fire is instantly lethal on contact, but it doesn't reach maximum range of 4 blocks until just over 1 second after the trap starts emitting flames. And if the raider destroys the trap after it begins firing but before the flames make contact, all of the flames vanish and the raider will survive. Now contrast this with a bolt shot, where once the bolts are launched, they will be lethal regardless of the trap's survival. So bolt shots do have some advantages in some ways over these incinerator traps. Additionally, the incinerator does not deactivate after firing, and after a very short cooldown, it'll be able to begin a new firing cycle, so these can be used as many times as the raider cares to wander into them. Now, incinerators are powerful traps due to 3 primary factors: their duration, their reusability, and their lack of friendly fire damage against other traps. The flames last for approximately 3 3/4 seconds, which means that a raider passing them, then attempting to retreat, will run right back into the path of the flames and die. So this can be used to significant effect in some specific cases. Also, it's worth noting that the travel speed of the flames is nearly identical to the travel speed of the bolts from the bolt shot trap, so they'll catch up to the raider at about the same point that the bolt shot would, barring the bolt shot's extended range. The activation times for the 2 traps seem to be just about identical as well, meaning that the incinerator trap really has very few downsides other than its shortened range compared to the bolt shot trap. Also worth noting is that the incinerator's flames disappear entirely and simultaneously when the incinerator is destroyed or finishes its activation cycle. We can demonstrate that here. You would expect, if you see a projectile going out this way, and if the flames are counted as a projectile, you would expect to see that, they start over here and then proceed from right to left across the screen here. And that's what they do when they fire, but that's not what they do when the trap is done firing. You'll see that the entire stream of flame diminishes simultaneously. It doesn't proceed from right to left like it did when it was initially starting. Now there's a couple of other fun interactions as well. The flames will both target and travel through both extended impalers and death pistons, both with and without the blockade mod applied. So I've got a piston here and an impaler here, both with the blockade mod applied, and you can see the flames travel right through those with no issues. Likewise, if I come over to the side over here, and if I approach this incinerator while the piston is extended, you'll see it has no problem targeting me right through that, and the flames will be lethal if I attempt to approach it while the piston is extended. So if I see this here, piston's extended, I still die. Now, another fun interaction here, at least for the raider's side, it's most definitely not fun, but for the builder it can be entertaining to watch. Melee weapons actually have a very hard time destroying incinerators. If you trigger an incinerator trap and then go in to kill it with a melee weapon, you die. This happens 9 times out of 10 because there's a very specific trick to it. You can, in fact, destroy a firing incinerator with a melee weapon, but you have to do it without lunge. If you target the incinerator and hover your cursor over the incinerator while you are attempting to attack the thing, you will lunge into it and die as you come into contact with the flames. Even if the incinerator is destroyed afterwards, that doesn't exactly help you because, well, you're dead. So don't do that. Instead, what you want to do is try and hit the incinerator trap, or hit a block adjacent to the incinerator trap, rather, with either of the swords, and destroy the incinerator trap. So you want to not aim at the incinerator trap directly, you want to aim at something next to it so that you don't lunge. So let's trigger this incinerator over here, and we'll demonstrate with the sledge blade. I can destroy that quite safely that way. The sledge blade is much, much, much better at this than the Fury's Edge sword is. We can see that over here. If I trigger this thing, it's actually possible to do it, but I have to do it from an extreme angle over here. And if I get that lunge while I'm anywhere close to a 45-degree angle, I will die. That's kind of a bad example there because I also triggered a bolt shot trap that could have destroyed it. But if I go ahead and trigger this one over here, I can kill the thing easily if I aim at the solid wall next to the incinerator and not at the incinerator directly. Alright, next let's take a look at the Incinerator's mods. They're fairly straightforward and largely lackluster, but the trap itself is so deadly that it really doesn't need these mods. The mods are also quite expensive. These 20 cost mods are about 30% of the cost of the trap itself, which is already hefty at 70. So 90 capacity for one of these traps with a single mod on it, or 110 for 2 mods, that's getting up there. That's almost approaching not worth it territory. But let's go ahead and take a look through them and see exactly what we've got here. So the first one off is Dragon's Breath. This increases the range of the trap to 5 blocks, but more importantly, it also increases the travel speed of the flames. Now, I can demonstrate that over here. Over on this side over here, I've got a Incinerator with the Dragon's Breath mod applied, and over here, I've got a Incinerator without it. So if I grapple to a point perfectly equal distance between the two that is a little ways away here, you'll see that those activated simultaneously. The Incinerator trap with Dragon's Breath on it kills me first. You can see that it got the kill on me because of the red line drawn to it. Now, if I stand here, again, that one killed me first. You would think if there was any deviation between these two at all, that if I kept repeating this test, eventually the other one would kill me. But no, the Dragon's Breath Incinerator is actually reaching me first in 100% of the cases, meaning that its quote-unquote projectile speed is actually faster. And if I go back into build mode here, and I swap Dragon's Breath onto the other trap, and then go into test mode, and we'll trigger those traps here, you'll see now it has again swapped to the trap with Dragon's Breath on it. So while it's a little hard to see visually, you can in fact tell by how this thing kills you that the Dragon's Breath modded trap is actually getting to the raider quicker. It's extending to that maximum range just a teeny tiny bit faster. Now, the most likely explanation for this is simply that the effective range of the trap doesn't matter, and it is down to time. So the flames are going to extend to their full range based on time. If it takes 1 1/10 seconds, which is about what I measured this to be, to extend from the front of the flame trap to its maximum range, and the maximum range changes, well, yeah, if it goes up, you get a longer stream of flame in the same distance, which means that the flame is effectively traveling faster. That leading edge of it that kills the raider extends faster. So that's the most likely explanation. Now, I think this is probably the best mod for this trap, and it's probably the only one worth bringing on a regular basis because it just improves the Incinerator's normal operation in several small, subtle ways. It's not changing the overall effect of the Incinerator, it's just boosting its numbers in several different useful respects. So, diving back into the rest of the mods, we have Eruption here. Eruption causes a short-ranged explosion that is timed to occur exactly as the trap finishes its firing cycle. This effect is identical in size and damage pattern to the self-destruct mod on the Impaler trap, but it only occurs at the very end of the full firing time, not when the trap itself is destroyed. Now, given that the full firing cycle of an Incinerator takes nearly 5 seconds, that's a little unfortunate, and it means this mod will rarely see effective use. Given the perceived and real threat level of Incinerators, most raiders will prioritize either avoiding and running away from, or destroying the Incinerator. That means the raider is going to be nowhere near the Incinerator, or the Incinerator itself will already be dead by the time Eruption would actually see use. And given its short range and low explosive radius, it means Eruption is just not all that useful. Additionally, due to the capacity and danger rating cost, Incinerators are pretty valuable, and they're best used in proximity to other traps. That keeps them protected and enhances their effects. You can make, death chambers or trap combinations very effectively using the Incinerator because it's such a powerful trap. Now, normally those clusters of traps and the production of them is actually quite easy. Incinerators can't cause friendly fire for traps. It can't break other traps, other than the holocube, of course. So you can place these near each other without much issue. Eruption makes this difficult, though, since an explosion will happily destroy everything you place near the Incinerator, and that's even worse than the Impaler, because it will do it every time the Incinerator fires. That's really bad. If you carefully construct a trap cluster, the Incinerator has to be the last thing that the raider will see. Otherwise, Eruption will just destroy the other traps near it, and, well, there goes your combination. So, since this adds nearly 30% to the cost of the trap and really has very few upsides and in fact quite a few large downsides, Eruption really doesn't make sense in most cases outside of very specific tricks with Masquerade Holocubes. Next, let's take a look at Napalm. Napalm is terrible, don't use it. End of story. No, seriously, end of story right there. Napalm leaves splashes of fire behind wherever each of the fire streams impacts a surface. So wherever each of those 9 fire streams from the incinerator comes out and hits a surface, it leaves a puddle of fire behind. However, the fire left behind is almost identical to the acid left behind by the splatter mod for corrosive cubes, except somehow it manages to be even less useful. The area covered by the napalm was already under direct threat from the trap to begin with. That's kind of the definition of the incinerator. If you hadn't hit a surface with that fire to begin with, which means that the fire is aimed directly towards where the napalm is going to be left, then you wouldn't have left napalm there. So the trap is still able to shoot that spot where the napalm is unless the trap is destroyed, in which case the raider can just wait a few seconds and the napalm goes away and then they can go on their merry way. So there's no point. Don't do this. Don't use this. If you have to think about it in terms of the raiders that are going to see this mod, look at speedrunners. It's not going to serve any purpose against speedrunners. They're either going to destroy the trap or they're going to be past it before it matters. Okay, so it doesn't affect speedrunners. It might get the slow raiders, right? Well, no, a slow raider is just going to poke their head around a corner and shoot the trap, or they're going to trigger the trap, back off, wait for it to finish firing, and then they have to wait like 3 extra seconds for the napalm to go away before they can poke their head back around the corner and shoot the trap. So it's not useful. Don't use this. Just don't. Now, Second Wave is the cheapest mod available at only 5 capacity, and like all the other Second Wave mods for surface traps, it causes the trap to be invisible and invulnerable until the gen mat is retrieved, after which it will undergo a roughly 4-second activation cycle before it's ready to trigger and fire at the raider. So what do you use these things for? Well, as I mentioned, they're great for slowing down and killing speedrunners, which is really almost the same thing, because a speedrunner that's brought to a standstill is often just dead due to the number of things that are trying to chase them down. Firing through pistons down a narrow hallway is also an excellent use case as well, but it's one that almost every raider has seen before and knows how to deal with. Now, the Eruption mod can be used to trigger Masquerade Holocubes like the self-destruct on an Impaler trap, but honestly, if you're going to do this, just bring the Impaler trap. It's less than half the cost, it doesn't come with the downsides of Eruption, and it's more likely to trigger properly because the raider is more likely to destroy the trap, or it might get destroyed by some other trap, or yeah, there's enough death flying around on the average level that eventually something's probably going to destroy that Impaler trap and pop the self-destruct. Compare that to an Incinerator, which has to go through the full 5-second firing cycle, and then it explodes and pops the the Masquerade Holocube. Yeah, the Impaler is just going to be a more reliable option for you in most cases. Now, I do want to leave a note about hiding these Incinerator traps. Due to the 9 flame streams, you can do some pretty nifty things with geometry around them. For instance, this little thing over here, you can see that about half of the streams of flame get blocked, but those 3 in the corner over there are just fine poking their way through. Likewise, you can do angled geometry like this over here, and you'll see that 1 of those flame streams will get through. So you can rotate this particular little piece of angled geometry in any orientation, and 1 flame stream will make it through. And while that might not seem useful, it's still enough to catch raiders that are trying to slip along one side of a tunnel. They won't hit me. I can in fact walk right up to the thing over on this side, so obviously it's not going to hit me over there. But generally raiders, when they hear one of these things go off, they're going to back away. They're going to try and get out of the way of anywhere where that fire might reach. So generally speaking, it's still useful to even have 1 of the flame streams poking through a tiny little hidden piece of geometry like this. Now, another excellent use of the Incinerator is simply to create open spaces that the raider thinks they can make use of, and then take away those spaces at a very inconvenient time. For instance, if the raider needs to go up to the ceiling to retrieve their bolt from a trap placed up there, Placing a well-hidden incinerator on a wall where the raider has to bypass it on the way up will make them unable to drop back down safely due to the fire below them. A follow-up bolt shot trap or impaler or an incinerator threatening the raider's current position then leaves them with the choice of dropping back down into the flames and their doom, or desperately attempting to disable the threatening trap, or just eating the follow-up trap and dying there. Now, I put together this little trap hallway as a very crude demonstration of this, but, oh look, there's a plasma sentinel up there. I probably want to shoot that, right? But now my bolt's up there, and I've got to go get it, so up we go, I guess. Oh no, there's homing bolts, and I can't drop back down because of the fire, but the homing bolts are going to kill me if I stay up here, and I was running double gun and didn't have any defensive tools that would work up here. So I'm just dead. If I don't see those traps behind me, then I have no recourse, and I will die at that point. Now, finally, I want to talk about a little more subtle use of the incinerator, which is to create a temporary visual obstruction. An incinerator the raider must pass that they can't see easily in order to accomplish some objective like picking their ammo back up. That will fire a 3.75 second visual barrier back behind the raider that they can't see through at all. Guards and traps, however, can see through that, and they will target and fire through the flames quite easily, and the raider won't be able to see the shots coming to block them. That means that they will have very little warning to activate arc barriers or deflect with a Fury's Edge or throw down a deployable shield or anything else like that. So in order to demonstrate this, I want to take you through kind of the opening hallway of one of my levels. So let's go ahead and shoot off this incinerator trap here, and that plasma sentinel has to go. That thing probably isn't a real threat, neither is that one. Oh, but that guy, I can't move through here safely and deal with all the other traps while he's there. But he kind of flew back that way, and now I need to go get my bolt back. So I can't really kill most of the rest of these traps easily with my sword, but they're not really going to hit me over there either. So I'm just going to grapple back here. And now I have homing bolts coming at me through a wall of flame from a remote trap. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Next time we'll take a look at one of the best anti-speedrunning tools in the game, the Death Piston Trap. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you then.